Thanks so much for watching our extended edition of Coffee with the Candidates. We're here today with former Vice President Mike Pence, now running for president. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Amanda.
And we're here with a group of undecided Republicans from Polk City. They've been asking lots of questions, and actually Luann asked Mr. Pence about Medicare specifically. We want to give you a chance to continue your answer there.
Well, I think there's two areas. One is private health insurance for working Americans. We've got work to do there.
Yes.
And I think the key is health savings accounts, portability, and consumer-directed health care, free market principles. With regard to Medicare, though, it's important that people understand that if we don't come to terms with the debt crisis that we're facing in this country, Medicare and Social Security are going to face mandatory budget cuts in the next 10 years. Mandatory. That are going to impact people that actually rely on those benefits. I can't tell you how old my wife is, but she just might be eligible. She is now a grandmother of 3, and so I'm a grandfather of 3. But look, it's one of the reasons why I talk about the national debt. It's one of the reasons I talk about the need to find a way to reform Social Security and Medicare for younger Americans and make sure that it's solvent and strong for people our age, and frankly, anybody over the age of 40. I just think you keep the same deal, Social Security and Medicare. Don't make any changes. I don't really believe in changing horses in the middle of the stream. You've been working for 20 years. I'm not going to change the program on you. But for people under the age of 40, I think the time has come for us to have a conversation about how we can reform these programs, keep them there solvent for us and our generation and the one that follows, but for younger Americans to really lift a massive burden of debt off of them by reforming these programs, and that's a big part of the equation going forward. So I think we can improve Medicare. I think we can stave off those mandatory cuts in 10 years, but it's going to take leadership, and it's going to take bringing people together in Washington to figure out how to get it done.
That's a big one.
Quick follow-up on the national debt. You served in the Trump administration as a vice president, and although the national debt and federal spending looked different then than it does under the Biden administration, that national debt did grow while you were in the White House. What would you do differently, and how do the American people know that that national debt won't continue to grow if you were president?
Well, let me say what we wouldn't do differently. Number one is Barack Obama had gone through years of budget cuts in our military. We had a lot of catching up to do. We had the largest increase in our military spending since the Reagan administration, and I thought that was money well spent. The other was during the pandemic. I think one of the reasons you have government is when history shows up, and you've got to have the wherewithal to be able to be there for businesses, for families, to see the country through the worst pandemic in 100 years. In between all that, Amanda, I'll stipulate to your point, we didn't do as good a job as we should have done controlling domestic spending. And that was with Republicans in control in Congress for part of it, Democrats in control. But people that know me well know that I'm a cheerful but tight-fisted conservative. And we will put our nation back on a path toward a balanced federal budget. But the biggest piece of that is going to be you got to have leadership that knows the Congress and knows how to create an environment where you can have a conversation about reforming what is most of the federal budget today, which is Social Security, Medicare, and interest on the national debt. That's about 75% of the federal budget, and it's growing. And so, for me, I think we could have done a better job. We'll make fiscal integrity a priority of any administration that I lead. But I really do believe that for our national security, for our nation's economy, for future generations like yours, we've got to come to terms with that national debt and give our kids a better deal and a better future with reform.
You mentioned national security there. I know Luann has a question more broadly maybe about foreign policy, about China.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. We are allowing foreign countries, such as China, to buy property in our state and our country. Why?
Well, I think you asked the right question, Luann. Is particularly, I think there should be very severe limitations on the ability of foreign nationals to purchase real estate in proximity to national security sites in this country. Look, China demonstrated with that balloon overflight that went over strategic areas of the United States.
Yep.
Okay. And also their provocations in the Asia Pacific, cutting off our ships in the South China Sea, cutting off our aircraft in overflights in the same region. China continues their provocations. They are not yet our enemy, but they have the potential to be the greatest strategic and economic threat the United States faces in the 21st century. You know, I led the effort in our administration to announce a change in policy toward China. We imposed $250 billion in tariffs on China that I'm glad to say are still there to this day. We made it very clear that we were no longer going to tolerate their trade abuses, intellectual property theft, military provocations, let alone human rights abuses, persecution of Christians, Muslim Uyghurs in their country. And China did come to the table in early 2020 in what came to be known as a Phase 1 trade deal. Now, the Biden administration has dropped the ball on it by all accounts. They haven't held China to the promises that they made in that deal. But look, we're the most powerful economy on earth. We do have the most powerful military in the world. As long as we stay on track with that, are willing to use access to this economy, to make it clear to China that they need to straighten up, fly right, join the family of nations, and end their abuses and provocations, or there'll be a price to be paid in that. Then we'll be fine. But weakness arouses evil, and if we continue to send a message of weakness, which I have to tell you, the administration is sending one more emissary to China, kowtowing to President Xi and the leaders there. It's just the wrong signal. After that balloon flew over the United States, and those fighter jets cut off our planes and ships cut off our ships, yep. I wouldn't have sent the Secretary of State. I'd have sent an aircraft carrier and just said, the United States of America is strong, the strongest military in the world. We're not going to tolerate this kind of behavior. And then use access to our economy to bring them to the table. Look, nobody wants it to devolve into conflict, but if we allow our military to continue to be eroded by the policies like we've seen under Joe Biden, and if we allow China to continue to engage in the kind of trade abuses that they've done for the last 20 years, we could be facing real challenges in the future, but we can deal with it.
Thank you.
In our earlier conversation for television, we talked a little bit about education. Mary has a question, though, specifically on behavior in the classroom.
You know, you talked about having the states take care of the education issues, but many of the states have not. Teachers have more and more on their plates with having to deal with children with extreme behavioral problems in their classrooms. School districts' hands are tied when dealing with some of these problems. What can we do to help school districts and their teachers deal effectively with these issues?
Well, you know, you and I need to have a longer conversation. I'll listen to you.
Thank you.
I'd say a couple of things. Number one is look, I went to Catholic school for 8 years. The Board of Education was applied to my seat of knowledge more than once in those 8 years. And the nuns knew how to get the paddle out when you deserved it. I guarantee you I deserved it more times than I got it. I think traditional discipline being returned to our schools as opposed to flooding our kids with Ritalin and other behavior modification chemicals makes more sense to me. I've had a great concern over the last 30 years with the advent of instead of treating discipline cases with the old-fashioned way.
I agree.
That we end up medicating kids and with psychotropic drugs. that I worry sometimes create even worse conditions. So that's a piece of it to me, is just affirming once again that, you know, the Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child. I'm a believer in that. But I also think the American people deserve to know that many of our public schools are medicating kids instead of disciplining kids. And I think we ought to get back to more traditional discipline, allow schools, make it clear that that's acceptable, just as it was in our time for the kids today. The other piece is I'm just a real believer that we've got to have a conversation on the more severe cases about a return to institutional mental health care in this country. You know, we see these tragic incidents, mass shootings, almost without exception, young, troubled men. And almost every story, like at the, you know, when I think of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas School, I thought of the catastrophic loss of life there. But what grieved me was to hear how many times the shooter's mother had gone to local authorities and to school authorities and said, he's a danger. Yeah. You have to help me do something with him.
Nothing gets done.
And they had nowhere to go.
Right.
And I think we've got, I think as a nation we need to have a conversation about returning to creating institutional mental health as an option for families.
Thank you.
It's begun to come back. You probably observed that here in Iowa, and we have in Indiana. One of the last things I did as governor of Indiana was we broke ground on the first mental health hospital built in 35 years in our state. But I have to believe that it's part of the equation of getting past these horrific incidents of violence is expanding institutional resources for families. It also deals with kids that are they're mainstreamed into public school, and they don't have the emotional and mental facility to be there.
Yes, thank you.
A follow-up on that as well, when you are talking about identifying potential problems that could turn into mass shootings or mass shooters, if you were president, how would you address that? Would you be comfortable with red flag laws of trying to create a database, or, you know, trying to train state workers on who should not be allowed to have guns in a house, or, you know, things like that? How would you actually approach that as president?
I think the right to keep and bear arms is enshrined in the Constitution. We never want to erode that right for law-abiding citizens. And you know, any of those measures, the concern is about due process of law.
Sure.
I'm just talking about creating options for parents. I mean, I gave a speech not long ago about this whole issue. I thought a couple of things about mass shooting that we ought to deal with. Number one is expanding institutional mental health in the country. Yeah. I've just talked to too many grieving parents. Mm-hmm. And I've read too many stories of families that had that troubled individual who said, well, I know where to go. I've talked to sheriffs that have said, the county lockup is where people end up going. They're there for 3 days, and then we turn them loose. Yeah. We can't keep them. They shouldn't. So to me, that's part of it. The other part of it, though, is I think it's one of the things I would have a conversation with the Congress the day I arrived. You know, I know most of those people personally, right? Right. And I would say, first appropriations bill, we're going to have a line item. Every public and private school in America is going to have a full budget from the federal government to hire a trained resource officer, armed, trained resource officer at the school, period. And take the whole budget issue out of it for states, for local communities. We just should end that conversation. The other piece is I think justice delayed is justice denied. I mean, the very idea that the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooter is going to spend the rest of his life in jail, that's not justice. It's not justice. And I'm advocating a federal death penalty statute that would have expedited due process, meaning from the time you are charged to the time you meet your fate is months, not years. And so that deranged person who's thinking about this cannot think in terms of, I may survive this and end up living 20 years in jail. That's not going to happen. And now, is it going to impact everybody? Probably not. Some of these people are just twisted and evil. But on the margins, I believe it could. And so those are the kind of things that I would look at. But mostly it's just about empowering parents to have resources to be able to say that, to be able to go into a court and say, we want to look at the opportunity to have our son, and mostly we're talking about young men, you know, involuntarily placed into an institution where they can get the kind of treatment that they need, and then having support for that.
Thank you. You talk about your record. That includes your time serving as a vice president, and Connie has a question for you about that.
Having been vice president, you know how important it is for our country. How are you going to choose your vice president?
Oh. Well, I don't want to get ahead of things. You know, I think, you know, when I was vice president, my goal every day was to be informed, to be prepared if history called, and to be of service wherever I could. But also, my goal was not to be the story. We don't elect co-presidents. And what I'd be looking for is a man or woman that understood the nature of the office, and at the end of the day, that I believed in my heart of hearts, if called upon, could not only fulfill the obligations of the office, but also would be as committed to the same agenda and the same values that brought me and my family into public service. So that would be it. But it's one of the interesting things, you know, I've told people I'm well known, but I'm not known well. And I think the reason is because I took the job, my role as vice president, very seriously. I never thought it was supposed to be about me, which wasn't hard with my running mate. But I just always, I always took a half step back. My job was to be supportive of the president, and I tell people I was loyal to President Donald Trump until my oath to the Constitution required me to do otherwise. But every day before that, we fought hard, shoulder to shoulder together for that record, and I'm incredibly proud of the work that we did for the American people. But you know, as I've traveled around Iowa, I realized, you know, a lot of people know me as that quiet vice president standing off to the side. And after that debate a couple weeks ago, people came up to me, some of the reporters did, and they said, "Who are you?" I said, "Look, I've been a governor. I've been a leader in Congress. I know how to make a point. I've been a conservative leader all my life." And so we're going to continue to introduce people to that brand of leadership that's ours, but that's what I'd be looking for in that job.
I'm glad you didn't, you know, say a woman. You know, I'm Biden. I'm going to have a woman vice president, and it's going to be black. I mean, that limits people's. I mean, you can't have. You have to have more variety than just two.
Well, I would tell you, when I was governor of Indiana, my first lieutenant governor was an outstanding woman who's gone on to lead our state's community college system. In fact, that was when I first met Kim Reynolds. She was lieutenant governor, and she met my lieutenant governor, and they became fast friends. And my lieutenant governor came back and said, "Boy, you got to meet this lieutenant governor from Iowa." Yep. And I knew she was special from day one. But yeah, I'm with you. It's more about shared values and understanding of the job, which is it's you know, it's a very interesting construct. And I would tell you, during my 4 years, I I was grateful for the opportunities that the President gave me to be involved in developing policy, advocating for our country at home and abroad and on Capitol Hill, and I'd be looking for the same kind of partner.
Would Kim Reynolds be on that list potentially?
Oh, of course.
You'd consider her?
She'd be on everybody's list. Yeah. She's a leader. She's a leader. And also, I honestly think someone that understands the role of states, because we put out a plan not long ago about restoring federalism in the country, not just, sending the Department of Education back to the states, but I'd like to see health care and welfare sent back to the states so states can innovate, do the kind of things we've talked about around this table. But having somebody that understands how states operate, the critical role that they play, would be really important to me. So you bet.
Well, we'll be watching. And we have one last question for you. We're here in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
You got something in that cup. How do you take your coffee?
It's coffee.
Well, good. Question one. Question two, what type of coffee, or how do you take your coffee?
Cream and sweetener.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. We let, my wife is particularly biased to hazelnut.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, creamer. So that's, but she almost, if she was here, she probably would have gotten it out.
Well, next time we may need to have a hazelnut to add for.
Well, if Karen's here, you
Karen.
score a lot of points. I mean, the only other thing you could do is show up with our 3 granddaughters. And yeah, very special.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. That's all the time we have for this roundtable discussion. But Mike Pence, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for bringing your questions, and thank you all for watching at home. Have a great day.